Let us look at a typical cell diagram here. This is the body of the cell, and it is surrounded by a cell membrane. Its two major parts are the nucleus and the cytoplasm. The nucleus is separated from the cytoplasm by a nuclear membrane, and the cytoplasm is separated from the surrounding fluids by a cell membrane, also called the plasma membrane. The different substances that make up the cell are collectively called protoplasm. Protoplasm is composed of 5 basic substances, which are water, electrolytes, proteins, lipids, and carbohydrates. First one is water. Most cells, except for fat cells, are comprised of water in a concentration of 70 to 85%. That is why there is a fact established that our body is made of 80% of water. Many cellular chemicals are dissolved in the water. Others are suspended in the water as solid particulates. Chemical reactions take place among the dissolved chemicals or at the surfaces of the suspended particles or membranes. Second fundamental substance is ions. Important ions in the cell include potassium, magnesium, phosphate, sulfate, bicarbonate, and smaller quantities of sodium, chloride, and calcium. These ions have interrelations between the intracellular and extracellular fluids. The ions provide inorganic chemicals for cellular reactions and are necessary for the operation of some cellular control mechanisms. For example, ions acting at the cell membrane are required for the transmission of electrochemical impulses in nerve and muscle fibers. Next up is proteins. After water, the most abundant substances in most cells are proteins, which normally constitute 10 to 20% of the cell mass. These proteins can be divided into 2 types, structural proteins and functional proteins. Let us discuss them a bit. Structural proteins are present in the cell in the form of long filaments that are polymers of many individual protein molecules. A prominent use of such intracellular filaments is to form microtubules, which provide the cytoskeletons of cellular organelles such as cilia, nerve axons, the mitotic spindles of cells undergoing mitosis, and a tangled mass of thin filamentous tubules that hold the parts of the cytoplasm and nucleoplasm together in their respective compartments. Fibrillar proteins are found outside the cell, especially in the collagen and elastin fibers of connective tissue, and elsewhere, such as in blood vessel walls, tendons, and ligaments. The functional proteins are usually composed of combinations of a few molecules in tubular-globular form. These proteins are the enzymes of the cell, and in contrast to the fibrillar proteins, are often mobile in the cell fluid. Also, many of them are adherent to membranous structures inside the cell and catalyze specific intracellular chemical reactions. For example, the chemical reactions that split glucose into its component parts and then combine these with oxygen to form carbon dioxide and water, while simultaneously providing energy for cellular function, are all catalyzed by a series of protein enzymes. Now, lipids are several types of substances that are grouped together because of their common property of being soluble in fat solvents. Especially important lipids are phospholipids and cholesterol, which together constitute only about 2% of the total cell mass. Phospholipids and cholesterol are insoluble in water and therefore are used to form the cell membrane and intracellular membrane barriers that separate the different cell compartments. In addition to phospholipids and cholesterol, some cells contain copious quantities of triglycerides, also called neutral fats. In fat cells, adipocytes, triglycerides often account for as much as 95% of the cell mass. The fat stored in these cells represents the body's main storehouse of energy, giving nutrients that can later be used to provide energy wherever it is needed in the body. Last in the line are carbohydrates that play a key role in cell nutrition and, as parts of glycoprotein molecules, have structural functions. Most human cells do not maintain large stores of carbohydrates. The amount usually averages only about 1% of their total mass, but increases to as much as 3% in muscle cells, and occasionally to 6% in liver cells. However, Carbohydrate in the form of dissolved glucose is always present in the surrounding extracellular fluid so that it is readily available to the cell. Also, a small amount of carbohydrate is stored in cells as glycogen, an insoluble polymer of glucose that can be depolymerized and used rapidly to supply the cell's energy needs.
Have you ever heard of video books? sqadia.com is delighted to present video books, medical books that have been tailored into a series of videos. sqadia.com videos are presented in the same order as the book's chapters. Explore now and make your learning easy.